Okay. Oh no, Luke, stop that. Okay.
You told me to.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm like a little overwhelmed that there's so many people here. I was like, oh, maybe I lucked out because it's so snowy. But thanks for coming. Not just for me, but happy to be here to talk to y'all. So I'll just get into it. If you can't hear me at any point, just like wave. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, okay. I gotta project.
What is that?
It's
Oh, nice, we have that on.
hello. Um, hello, 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 hello. That's good. Okay. Okay, sweet. I can see my slides over there, so that's great. Okay, great. So, hi everyone. I'm Veronica. I'm a service designer at the City of Toronto. I work on the open data team, as Ilya just introduced. Who here has been on the Toronto Open Data portal? Almost everyone. Woo! Okay, that's awesome. Well, in case is it advancing? Oh, there we go. It's just a little laggy. Okay, cool. Just in case you haven't, this is what it looks like with my bookmarks. Please ignore that. But this is the City of Toronto Open Data Portal. It's a place that hosts publicly available government data. Usually it's in machine readable formats, and it's all available under the open data license, which lets you use the data for pretty much any purpose, including commercial. And yeah, some examples of open data are things like the names of like registered dogs and cats across the city. That's one. Occupancy of shelters the previous night. There's data sets like that, but it's kind of all across the board. There's like lots of operational stuff. There's some budget stuff. There's some, like who is in attendance at different council meetings, all different types of things across all divisions. And yeah, that's what the team back there are kind of responsible for. So just, a little bit more information in terms of what the open data team does. I think some of the core activities that we do is we help divisions publish open data. So as open data, we're like a little bit on the outside. We sit in the technology services division. And then, we might help like the water department upload some data about some water stuff. We also maintain the public-facing website, open.toronto.ca, and then we're also providing divisions with other types of support as relates to data and open data more specifically. So hopefully that's like maybe an adequate intro to open data. If you're not totally familiar with it, you can check out open.toronto.ca right now. I won't be offended. But yeah, so today's talk is called Would Data Help You Depute at City Council Meetings? So in some ways, it's like this was the hook to get people here, but I actually want to ask you all this question. So that's what we're going to talk about at the discussion, the breakout, if you choose to come to that. But yeah, I'm kind of working on a project that's related to this topic. So I'll just kind of like do a little detour through that project before I talk about, what staff reports are, how you can go and depute at committee meetings, and then a little bit behind the curtain of how staff reports are made. That's kind of been what I've been like looking into a little bit as I've been working on the project that I've been working on. So I just, wanted to kind of share a little bit of what I've learned, my journey as I've been kind of working on this. So quick question, who's read a staff report? Okay, nice. Great job, folks. But if you haven't, also a great job. You're living your lives, so totally cool. How many people have deputed at a committee meeting? Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, cool. So I'm going to say some stuff about deputing, but if I get it wrong or you have details to add, please feel free. Okay, great. So I'll just have one slide about the project I'm working on in a nutshell. So we'll get more into like what staff reports are, but in a nutshell, the project that I'm working on is when divisions They make staff reports for counselors when they're meeting at their committees or at council. What we've been asked to do is to figure out how our team can encourage them to make sure that data that's underlying that report, that's informing that report, that like substantially is like involved in the analysis that's like in that report, how can that also be available in the open data catalog? So should I say it again? Or okay, let's keep going. Thumbs up, Ilya. Thank you. So what are staff reports? I'm sure you're wondering, especially folks who haven't maybe read a staff report. No worries. Totally cool. Before this project, I had also never read a staff report. But staff reports are how city staff generally communicate with council members and committees. So, there's a few examples here in this little table. So sometimes council members, they'll request staff reports. They'll be like, we want to know like, how this thing is performing. So please come back, explain to us, what's like the typical procedure of investigating a dangerous dog call that gets called into like 311 and gets sent over to MLS. Like, please explain that to us. What's like the typical time that it takes in order to address these things? So that's like one instance, one type of staff report that can kind of come about. Another one is when staff are requesting authorization. So often, if a city department is like doing something totally new, it'll be outside of the purview of the things that they're already been authorized to do. And so in those instances, they'll have to ask for authorization. So like the renovictions program is something that is new. And so they've had to ask for authorization to do that. And then there's a last bucket, which is just like, hey, FYI, like we did this really cool study that's about like equity and trees across the city. Here it is. Please read it. So those are generally the different types. And what's really cool is that the reports form the basis of meeting agendas. So I wonder if I click this, if you'll be able to see it. Oh no. Okay. Sorry, I just need to reshare real quick. This one. Share. Okay, y'all see that? And my gazillion tabs. Oh no, don't look. Okay, so this is something that's called TIMIS, but this is on the Toronto website. So if you just go like secure.toronto.ca/council, it'll take you to this place where they have all of the council meetings, including the schedules, the agendas, and for what's happened previously, you'll see minutes, and it'll post agendas 1 week in advance of whatever meeting. So next week, well, we can actually go to the calendar. So next week, let's see, next week on the agenda is the General Government Committee. So this is the one where they're like, what are we spending money on, basically? That their thing is like, making sure we're spending money responsibly generally. And so you can go in, and because it's a week before, these are all of the agenda items that are going to be discussed next week. And you can actually click into it. Maybe let's not look at the iOS airdrop thing. That one's a bit silly. But this one is about hearings for property taxes that are canceled or reduced or refunded. And so you'll see at the bottom of every single one, not every single one, but all the ones that are related to a staff report, if you go all the way to the bottom, it'll have the staff report itself. So usually the first link in the background information, it'll be report from the executive director. So the executive director of the division that's like putting forward this staff report. And so you go into the staff report and you'll see, it's like very typical kind of structure. There's like a summary. There's the recommendations. So usually this will be, what the division is like asking for permission to do. So in this case, it's to like approve all of the tax appeals that they've received applications for. And then it'll kind of have a breakdown, blah, 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 decision history and comments. So comments is the part where they'll kind of like provide a justification for the recommendation that they're kind of putting forward. Okay, let's keep going. I'm boring myself. Okay. So where was I? Okay. Oh, cool. Okay. Sorry, I gotta reshare my screen. Sorry. What a thing. Okay, great. Great. So yeah, so the reports form the basis of meeting agendas. That's what that whole detour, the point of that was kind of for. And if we can go to the next slide. Oh, great. Okay, great. And so just very briefly, in terms of how the staff report kind of fits into the democratic process, we all know there's like council, city council, Mayor Chow is there, all the other councilors, they're doing their circle thing. But the council delegates certain decisions and certain discussions to committees. So there's a whole bunch of different committees. And some of these committees have the ability to kind of make final decisions. A lot of them don't, but their main purpose actually is like to create recommendations that can basically just go straight to city council, and then city council can kind of have less of a debate. So it's kind of like the first pass at the recommendations. So usually staff report writers, they'll send it first to committee. So like the general governance committee that we were looking at, that's an example of a committee. They'll go through it for the first time. They might ask questions. They can send it back. They can kind of adopt and like move it forward to council, or different ways to do that. And then those recommendations will go to council. Once council adopts them, then they'll be enacted. They'll be the decision of city council, and they'll be kind of enacted. And then the job of city staff is to implement. So just all that is to say that, there's opportunities throughout this entire process for public participation. So at the very far left, when we're writing staff reports, when reports are being written by city staff, often there'll be public consultations. Part of the reason that we think this is a good recommendation is because we did public consultation and folks told us that this is something that would be helpful, or it would, solve the problems in folks' kind of daily lives. So that happens at the very far end, but then at standing committee and council as well. These are moments at that first committee meeting where people can actually attend, and you can speak, you can submit a comment, you can kind of write in, and in theory, committees should kind of take your comments into consideration when they're making their decision about whether to adopt the recommendation or to kind of change it or amend it or however. And then once it goes to city council as well, you have the opportunity to submit a comment to city council, and it'll be published like with the agenda. Usually they don't like read it out loud, but it'll be in the record and they should kind of consider it. And then at the very end, even once a decision is kind of recorded as final and implemented, at that moment, city staff as well may be doing some consultations in order to figure out what's the best way to kind of implement this policy or this recommendation that has kind of gone at this point through this entire process. There's still kind of opportunity for public participation. So those lines that go into this community council or standing committee meetings and then into city council, that's called like a deputation. So if you go and you depute, that's like showing up and being like, my name is Veronica. My opinion on bicycles is that they're awesome. And you can pretty much have a comment. I mean, it's supposed to be relevant. I don't know how they screen for that, but yeah, that's called deputation. So you can be a deputant and you can depute. Okay, so you can sign up to speak. It's like once you go into one of those agenda items, there'll be a little button that's like speak or write a comment. I'm not going to do it because it's going to make the whole Zoom situation difficult again, but I promise it is there. Okay, so I'm just conscious of time. I'm going to go faster. But so we as Veronica, me working on this project, I've had the wonderful opportunity to kind of learn more about staff reports. So I just wanted to share a little bit of what I've learned kind of behind the curtain, how the sausage is made. But yeah, there's lots of roles that are involved. It turns out that there's like hundreds of people who are involved in making sure that the agenda for each committee meeting, for each council meeting is is good. Like the staff reports are going to be ready for the meeting. The staff reports are kind of like strategically ordered in order to, make sure there's enough time for people who want to talk about these like hot topics, but then also that, we're meeting our deadlines in order, if for instance, there's like some kind of like zoning issue, there's usually like timelines that are related to that. Otherwise, people can sue us. So kind of all of this organizing is like a really big process. And so in addition to like the lead author, we also have this person who's the agenda forecasting system lead. So that's like their responsibility to help forecast the agenda, help prepare the agenda. And then of course we have the data analysts who are, helping to kind of prepare the report, make sure that we're making actually data-driven decisions. So I'll just keep going. But yeah, we've been like making little maps, but I just wanted to kind of like show that, before we even get to the writing process, there's like this decision making about like, okay, are we gonna write a report? How is this gonna summarize, the activities that we're doing? How is this going to, request the type of authorization that we want to request, or kind of share the information that we want to share to committee before we, later request authorization. So there's like all of this kind of discussion that's going on. And then when folks are kind of writing the report, there's this forecasting process. And this forecasting process is basically just like a whole series of meetings where they're trying to figure out like how the agenda is going to come together. And there's lots of questions that are kind of being asked throughout this process. Like, hey, did you consider this? Is this report going to include this? This counselor has been really interested in this specific subset of topics related to your report. Is that going to be addressed? And so there's kind of like a whole bunch of reviews that are kind of going on. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so this slide is just to say that we have lots of reports every single year. My project, the scope is just these 4 standing committees. And even so, there's like 40 reports in every cycle. So a cycle is kind of like between council meetings. So there's kind of like almost like 400, I would say probably, reports that go to these committees that are within the scope of my project per year. And so of course, one of the questions that we're trying to work through is like, what's kind of a priority if our goal is to help people, make sure that data that informs the report is going to be on the open data catalog. 400 could potentially get to be a lot of data, a lot of, kind of support to provide. So that's something that we're kind of thinking through, we're working through. And so I just kind of took a little screenshot of one of my Excel sheets. But in kind of doing this, like, we've been learning actually a lot about what the city does. So just in one of these cycles, cycle 9, which was like October 2024, we see that there's like lots of things that are kind of recurring. So just, as a matter of how the rules and the legislation is, there's a lot of things that just need to go to committee and to council. So for instance, like to designate a building as a heritage building, that needs to go through committee. So every single heritage building that has, somebody's made a report, they like typed all that stuff up, it's gone to committee. Usually they just greenlight it because it's like not super controversial, but that does happen. And then same thing for zoning changes. A lot of the zoning changes, same thing, just as a matter of the rules and regulations, they need to kind of go through this process. And then same for like BIA member changes, you got to make a report and then it's got to go through this process. Of course, there's like the more substantive ones, which are more about like program updates. So program updates, they can come from, across the whole city. Sometimes it'll be a little bit earlier, like, we did a little feasibility study. These are the outcomes of the feasibility study. And it'll be a little report with that, and maybe kind of like requesting some direction or kind of proposing a direction to kind of go forward. And then sometimes it'll happen at the very end. So, it's like we've figured everything out. We want to implement like the renovation program as described in all of the appendices that are like attached to this report. And so that's like an example of like where it's really far down the end. And of course, the city, there's a lot of divisions that report up through like the city manager's office, but there's also a lot of groups that are kind of external technically to the city. There's like a little dotted line. So TTC, for example, is a good example. Senior Housing Corporation, we have this like pension organization that's called like OMERS. And so all of these groups could be providing updates to council or to committees and then to council. Yeah, so anyways, I'm just talking. This is what we've learned as we've kind of been trying to figure out this staff report project, and we just wanted to share. And then I'll just go super fast through this. But we've been kind of fortunate enough to get to talk to a lot of our colleagues who are like deeply involved in the staff report process. And we've heard kind of like interesting things. Like sometimes people will say things like, oh, the data is already on the portal. They'll be referring to like the building permits data set, right? They're like, yeah, our report is about housing. And technically that's all we're drawing from. We're drawing from like buildings. But there's, several layers of analysis between the report and that data set, and those analyses often aren't. That's something that, I think we're trying to figure out what to do with. And then, yeah, something else that's interesting is that data and analytics teams are also being asked to kind of prepare a lot of dashboards internally or for the public. And so that actually consumes a lot of their capacity, understandably. And so sometimes open data is like not something that's, top of the mind, top of radar, something that's they're like prioritizing their capacity towards. And then, of course, teams are worried about misinterpretation. And, that comes from a lot of things. A lot of data sets are kind of like operational. And so, an example is like trees. Apparently, when a tree is planted in the city of Toronto, it's under warranty for 2 years. And while it's under warranty, it doesn't enter the tree asset management data set, which makes sense, right? Because it's under warranty, so somebody else is managing that asset. And so, there's just like weird little quirks about like how the operations are that makes it possible for data sets to, be kind of misinterpreted. And so folks are maybe understandably, they're internally like trying to explain all this stuff to everybody as well. And so they're a little worried sometimes that it could be misinterpreted. Okay, I think that's the last slide. So we're still learning. We have some questions for you in the breakout. If you have deputed or you have interest in deputing and want to talk about these questions, we're going to do a breakout. And then there's also, we have a survey that's still running. I think today is the last day to fill it out. But Luke's working on a policy refresh for the open data program. So if you want to fill that out, you can. Today is the last day. Oh, no. Well, tonight is the last night.